Hello, everybody, and welcome back to All Walks of Light. This is Kim E.
Kim M.
And this is Shanell, and Jason is still out with work obligations, and we love him. He'll be back soon.
He'll be back soon. So in the meantime, we're just going to keep bringing on guests. And this week we have Nick Salzman. I don't know why I said Nick's plural. There's only one Nick here, I promise. But he is so great. He is a dowsing professional. He has been in many conferences. You can follow his YouTube. And of course, at the end, we will attach all his links. But on top of dowsing, he also does tattooing, and it's breaking ink tattoo. I will put a lot of his information on that as well. And if I lived closer, I would definitely let him stick me with some needles, because his tattooing is amazing. You guys have to see it. A lot of it is like spiritual stuff too. So just some of the most amazing, beautiful tattoos I've ever seen. So I'm going to pass the mic to Nick, let him explain how he got into dowsing, how he got into tattooing. And if you guys remember, and you've been paying attention to the beginning, he's the one that introduced Kim and Shanell. So he was like the beginning of the four coming together. Yeah. So this is the Nick that we mentioned, and here he is. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to
Nick.
And it's definitely a pleasure to be here with you all. Reflecting on what you just said, Kim, I remember back in those groups, I think me and Shanell first met in this one group. It was crazy, man. It was all about like black magic and possessions. And so we were on there, just kind of two different people giving out information, and everyone's all like, what are you talking about? And we're like, well, this is what we see. This is what we see. This is what we're dealing with. And, for the most part, it was a pretty wild group. And I think we both got kicked out of it.
Yeah, we did. We got kicked out, and I got blocked. I don't know about you, but they all blocked me and kicked me out of life.
You are not dark enough. Kick them out.
And then
about that.
I think we were too accurate, to be honest.
Well, whatever it was, we found ourselves. I was like, oh, hey, try this group out. You're like, oh, hey, look at this group. And then I remember seeing Kim McCarthy, and I remember hearing about this group. I think it was called Lightworkers Unite, is what it was. And I was like, hey, these ladies seem pretty cool. They seem pretty level-headed, and they seem to be open to stuff that, might be contradicted to what they say or whatever. I said, check them out. These ladies seem cool. And then here we are. It's so cool to see what y'all have done together and what you guys are now doing together. It's just been great to see it happen. Mm-hmm. So thank you for having me here. So one of the first things people know about me is that I tattoo. Tattooing has always been a way for me to kind of escape some stuff and kind of give me an opportunity to ground a little bit. When I was younger, I had like four, I was the youngest of four boys, and we were kind of all, just kind of crazy and fought each other a lot and stuff. And so
you're poor. No, I'm just kidding.
So drawing was something that I could do that they weren't really interested in, and it kind of left me alone. And I kind of enjoyed doing it a lot over time too. So getting into tattooing was kind of like a progression, but I never really thought I would be into tattooing. It just seemed like something that, was beyond me, I guess. I just kind of doodled and drew. But then when I got into dowsing, now dowsing is something that, I find really, really neat. But what I do with it, dowsing is kind of like the big gray term, right? That's like just kind of like, oh, we're light workers, but what do you do specifically? What do you bring to the table? Yeah. Right. So the dowsing is a very, very general term. And a lot of my understandings and the things that I've come to the conclusion of definitely would probably be closer to what some would say New Age. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the first questions people ask me is, how'd you get into it? So before I can talk about that, I got to talk about something else first. So there came a time when I started noticing, and I want to speak about this because I think other people in this group and people in this audience are also dealing with this. And so hopefully it sheds a little light for them. I started noticing, at a very young age, that I would always wake up in the middle of the night when everybody else was sleeping, and I'd always hear the house settling. Now, someone would say, oh, it's the vents. Oh, it's the house settling. It is what it is. And like sometimes it is way too specific and way too repetitive in places that don't pop. Now, a vent can make a popping sound. The top of your dresser doesn't inherently make a popping sound.
Right.
So these are the things that kind of got my attention, right? And at that time of my life, I'm 38 now. So I was probably around about 24, 25, somewhere around there when I first started diving into going, what is that? I had a teacher that would kind of help me with meditation. That was kind of our thing. He was a meditation guy. And so I eventually was like, hey, man, I'm like hearing these sounds? Do you know anything about this? And he was just kind of like, well, if you tell anybody about it, they're probably going to think you're crazy. So keep that to yourself if you have to, you know? So
First word of advice, don't tell anybody.
don't tell anybody because you're going to sound kooky. And I tell you, it gets more kooky. So this sound I would hear. And then one night I started making the connection. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. Now I'm like 25. I wake up in the middle of the night and I do what most people do in the middle of the night. I reach over, I grab my phone, I start scrolling the internet, looking at stuff, reading stuff, right? And the next thing you know, from the other side of my house, I can hear it pop right on my wall. It came from one side of the house to the other, and it was sitting right next to me, the giant pop on the wall next to me. And I'm like, the heck is that? I noticed that when I didn't pick up my phone and I acted like I was asleep, it wouldn't happen. But as soon as I reached for my phone and turn it on, within a few minutes, pop, in the room, it joined me. So then I knew there was something going on. I started hearing the sound everywhere I would go. I'd walk down the street and I could hear it hitting houses, hear it hitting cars. And it just sounds like if you had like a small pebble or a sound, something small, like throwing it up against stuff. It's just not too loud, but loud enough that I could hear it. And everywhere I would go, I would hear this. And it started getting to the point where it was about driving me crazy because it was very apparent. And I remember one night I was sitting there with my wife and I heard this pop on the ceiling. I mean, it was loud. It was like someone threw a marble against the ceiling. I jumped. It was so loud. And I looked at her and I go, did you hear that? And she looks at me and goes, famous last words, hear what?
I was gonna ask you, did your wife hear all the ticking?
No, she does a little bit now, but for the most part, no, not at all. So I'm like, I don't know what the heck that is. Fast forward, one night we decided to go out for dinner. And I'm at this point in my life where I'm reading book after book of just any information I can find about what happens after death and before birth. And there was a Barnes & Noble that was next to the restaurant we were at. And so I decided, hey, I'm gonna go over here after dinner. I'm gonna go find me a new book. So I go over there and I'm walking up and down the aisles. And I'm not finding anything. Walk in and I'm looking and I'm not finding anything. And as soon as I about give up, pop right on the shelf, like someone hit the shelf with a marble. And I look over and I see this one gray book surrounded by all these black books. And I kind of peek my head and I pull it out like this. And right on the cover, it says People That Don't Know They're Dead by Gary Leon Hill. So I said, okay. So I opened that book and I just started reading, the author's like foreword, right? Where they just kind of talk about the author a little bit. And this guy's named Gary Leon Hill. He's from Eugene, Oregon. And his accomplice who's working with in this book is from Nebraska. Well, I giggled because myself, I'm from Oregon. And my first teacher that taught me all this, who's extremely clairvoyant, is from where? You guessed it, Nebraska. So I didn't read anything else in it. I closed the book, I went up to the counter and I purchased it and went home. So inside that book, it introduced me into the approach of learning how to identify and clear earthbound entities using a pendulum. I have never even heard of a pendulum at this time. It was something completely new to me, right? And so reading this book, I'm getting inspired because now the sounds and the pop is joining me every time I open this book. Every single time I open this book, pop right next to me. All right, so after reading this book for a little bit, one in the middle of the night, I get on Etsy and I'm looking at little crystal pendulums, the ones that like on the little chains you get at like most like metaphysical stores. And I ended up finding a lady here in Oregon that sold one, and I bought a rose quartz one, which is a pink stone. Now, I'm not really someone that wears pink. I've never been drawn pink. I don't own anything pink. You know what I mean? And for some reason, I bought this rose quartz pendulum. And so I was reading more about how to get this thing to harmonize with your energy, carry it with you, put it under your pillow when you sleep, all this and that. So within the first week of me having it, I have this very vivid lifelike dream where I'm in the presence of this very, very radiant blonde woman. And when I tell you this, like the feeling that I get from it, this wasn't like one of those dreams where here's someone that's really beautiful and we're about to hook up. No, this was like walking into your principal's office and you're kind of in trouble and she happens to also be really good looking. So, and so
feeling.
And so instantly, this woman, this presence, starts telling me that her name is Archangel Ariel and that she is here to help me perfect my fate. She started telling me a little bit more about walking with me through life and how she's walked with me in life before. This is coming from someone that has no idea about angels, no idea about devils or demons or any of that kind of stuff. I don't know anything about it, right? And so I wake up and I Googled it and I found all this information. the relationship that has transpired with me and her since has been amazing. It's quite an unfolding of just a lot of amazing things, right? So what I'm getting to point is that sound that I was hearing was guidance. And that same sound is also what I hear when I get in around earthbound entities. For instance, if I walk into someone's house, I did this to someone and it kind of freaked them out. I walked into their house and I'm like, oh, I got to use the bathroom. I'm like, where's the bathroom? I'm like, oh, down the hallway over there. And I look down the hallway and I hear pop right on the side of the door right there. And I look at them and I say, hey, who sleeps in that room over there? Oh, so-and-so sleeps in that room. I go, do they get nightmares a lot? And they're like, how did you know? So not only is it guidance, but it's also your intuition. It can help tell you where things are and what things are. And you'll find that, different earthbounds that come around, they make certain pops. They're all similar, but they're very distinctly different tones and even different locations. These are the types of things you wake up in the middle of the night and maybe you hear a pop over by a picture frame. And that picture frame happens to be of a deceased relative that you've been thinking about. They do these things to help let us know that they're there. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think everybody hears this stuff, but some people do. So how I got into dowsing is because I was always surrounded by things that I couldn't see, but I could feel and I could absolutely hear. And I didn't know what it was, but I was very curious. And it wasn't until my oldest son turned about 5 years old, he started waking up and dealing with stuff too. And then that's when I was like, all right. I'm gonna get a handle on this and figure it out and see how I can help keep my house clear. And then the unfolding that has been happening ever since has just been wonderful. And so everything that I get to do now is to help people. Sometimes you get to see me jump in on some of these different Facebook groups, paranormal and stuff. I'll usually jump on there and I'll ask, you want some help or you want any of that kind of stuff. And so that's where I meet a lot of people and I got a lot of my practice for over the years. And, getting a chance to meet Shanell, we worked with a lot of different cases together, and working with Shanell was really interesting because I can locate what was there and I can locate how it got there. And then Shanell would be able to tap in and find the emotional link behind it. If it was someone that was earthbound, she would be able to see the trauma that they sustained as they were. I could tell you what it was, how they passed, and what we need to do. She could say what kind of baggage they carried in life to help understand what we're doing. So many times I'd be like, hey, Shanell, I know it's late, but can I show you a picture? You want to see something crazy? She, of course, would be like, all right, cool. And then I would send her, go, what does this look like to you? Because this is the reading I'm getting, what I'm dealing with. What does it look like to you? So she really helped me paint a picture mentally of some of the stuff that I was engaging with energetically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've done some good stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, I've learned a lot from Shanell, and Chanel's been a very big help with some of the stuff that I've done. And like I said, it's been good having the ability to bounce ideas after somebody else that also kind of gets it that way too, because people that use clairvoyant abilities and people that use more than just empathy, where you're able to taste stuff and smell stuff and see stuff and visit places and walk around corners all inside your mind while in somebody else's house. Try and explain that to somebody else that doesn't,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and it's no.
Go upstairs in the attic or go here and like visualizing stuff. Yeah, I love it.
So it's been, a joy being able to share some of these topics with like-minded people. And then from there, we kind of compare and contrast. And I think all of us collectively, we kind of raise up all of our vibes. You know what I mean? So
It's also
amazing
how we talk to each other, just when you think, just when we need to meet each other,
Yeah.
in instances, you and Shanell working on those cases together, it's just interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick, I have a question. So you said
Sure.
you got that rose quartz pendulum, right? And then it was like you heard that knocking, so that guided you to get that book, and you were like, okay. Then Ariel was like this. So now when your son was hearing that, was that when you were like, okay, there's an earthbound entity in my house and we got to get rid of it? So is that when you really started using the dowsing? Like, so what did you say? You were like, okay, I'm going to use this pendulum to get rid of the spirit, you know what I mean? Get rid of like the energy.
At first, I just wanted to know who was around me. But my son picking up on that, I didn't pick up a pendulum until probably about a year after that. like I said, I was into meditation, and the only thing I knew what I thought I was doing is I would close my eyes and I would like, like you're inside your house, right? You can close your eyes and you know what rooms go into where and stuff. And I would walk through my house in my mind and see if I can find anything. But I can tell you about this one though, if you want specifically. So this is kind of interesting with Pride Month being just last month and stuff. So I got my kids my old video game system, and they wanted to play video games, but they didn't have a television in the room. So we went to Salvation Army, and this television, no problem. Turn it on, no problem. Turn it on, no problem. Great. What? $10 for this thing? Take it. So took it home and put it inside my kid's room. And that night I kept hearing him get up in his bed and he'd turn and look. And then there was a couple times I was sleeping on the couch. I lived in like a 600 square foot little apartment. It wasn't much room. So I woke up a couple times to something like the presence of something standing over me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I wasn't too afraid at this time. I was more curious because I really knew that there was something going on in my life. And now I was like, okay, now it's like face to face with me. Right. So I was always kind of a trickster, I guess you can say. The way I would handle these things was usually with a lot of humor. And so I got up and I was trying to like call this thing to me and it wouldn't come to me. And so I got up and I was tired and I had a headache. And so I took a little bit of aspirin, and I remember sitting there in the kitchen and I pulled out the aspirin, I took it, and then I looked around and I went like this. And I put it on the table and I walked to my bedroom, and I'm sitting here laying down, everyone's asleep. All of a sudden I hear a
Shut up.
and I'm like, okay. So I sit up. I say, come on in, come on over here. Let me help you out. Come on over here. And I could hear it get to my doorway. I could hear the pop, the creak in my doorway. And I'm like, all right, come on in. And it wouldn't come in. And it wouldn't come in. It would stay at a distance. So it got to the point, it's about 4:30 in the morning at this time. And I'm like, I'm tired as hell. And I lay down. And as soon as I start to go to sleep, pop right on the wall right next to me. And I'm like, you son of a.
Yeah, that's funny.
So here's the thing that I've come to realize when I'm dealing with earthbound entities. Anytime I'm dealing with men and children, they often will come right up to you. Anytime I am dealing with a woman, they usually stay about 15, 20 feet away, and I have to coax them to get closer. But usually 15, 20 feet away is what it seems to be. This carried the characteristics of both. This stayed away. It wouldn't quite come to me, but its presence was strong. It was more than a woman that I was dealing with. And I wondered what it was. And so I ended up reaching out to my friend, my first teacher, the one from Nebraska. She's passed on now, but I called her before I didn't really quite know how to like clear houses and stuff yet. And I was like, what the heck's going on here? I'm like, I think this is a dude, but it's staying away like a chick. And I was like, have you heard of, do you know this thing's name is Joseph? And she started laughing. She says, you mean Josephine?
Oh,
I had a transgender in my house. And so
wow.
it was definitely throwing off those weird vibes. I'm like, this feels like a dude, but you're acting like a chick. Like what's going on here? You know what I mean? So long story short, quite the prankster this one was. And we were able to get it some help and be able to get it to move on and cross over and do all that. So that was kind of like really my first time that I really did it on my own, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so since then, I've been kind of like diving into it more and more and trying to understand the topic much more.
See, I told you I had a lot of questions. I'm like, but so when you cross them over, can you explain to me, like, what is the process of that? Like, how do you cross them over? Like, how do you say, hey, you're stuck here. I'm going to help you go home. Is that what you do? Or
Pretty much.
Okay.
The protocol is a little bit different depending on what you're dealing with. I base entities in the three qualifications: human, non-human, and thought form energy. And so the way we interact with them is similar. And when I do this stuff, I try and like be about business. I don't like, a lot of people like when they start with dowsing, they get into I want to know the who, how, when, where, why, and what. I'm like, none of it even matters. What we need to do. What we need to do is do the work, because when I spend 20 minutes wanting to know, in what time frame are you from? What country did you live in? Did you have kids? What was your wife's name? Like if I do all that 20 minutes later, I'm exhausted, dude. And I've got nowhere and I'm not doing the work. So
I bet the energy's exhausted too.
Yeah, they're in a rough state. It's like someone trying to hear your whole life history while you're in the emergency room with two broken legs.
I'm so serious because like even with the paranormal investigating, it takes a lot of energy for them to manifest and even utilize certain tools that you're bringing in front of them, you know? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm just saying I imagine that that would be exhausting for them too.
Yeah,
And
yeah, sure. And the thing is, like, you just got to remember, a lot of them are in a rough state and they just need to be moved on. So, Kim, to answer your question, how do we connect with them? One thing that I was taught within this book, and anybody that's interested in this book, it's called People That Don't Know They're Dead by Gary Leon Hill. I'll try to put that link later for you
I'll
guys.
put it on the notes. Yeah, so I'm writing that down too. Gary.
So,
I've been Googling it while you're talking.
Oh, I was wondering what you were doing. I was like, she's doing something over there.
so basically, the way it works, the way that it was explained to me, we're going to talk with crossing over a human entity. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Each of us have a soul. Okay, so because of that, that soul is a part of something much bigger than us. You can call it source, you can call it heaven, call it God, whatever, bigger than us. That soul in us is like a water drop compared to the ocean. The ocean's vast beyond comprehension, right? But that water drop is the entire ocean in one drop. That's how we are. So we make a connection through their higher self. It is on a soul level that we do this. This soul level, when we make this connection, and all I have to do is literally ask, because it's all permission based, right? So like when I'm like holding my pendulum, right? I'm like sitting here doing my pendulum work or whatever. And I like to use this just so then that way I have like a little tangible feedback. But anybody that uses this long enough, you can feel what those yes or no's feel like with your eyes closed by the time you get, used to doing this. But here, I kind of came up with my own pendulums that assist in the work that I do. So what I do is I just ask for permission, like, universal knowledge. Do I have permission to ask about the energy in my house? And if I get a yes, then I'll keep going. Then I'll say, do we have permission to ask about, do we have any earthbound entities in this house? And if I get a yes, then I keep going. And so from there, it's all about permission, right? And so I ask, do I have permission to connect to their higher self and send them healing energy? Yes. So anytime we are into dowsing or anytime we are into communicating with spirit, I want you to think of something. A good car salesman, not a sleazy one, but a good car salesman knows how to direct the conversation and make you feel like you're a part of it the entire time. He knows the words to ask. He knows the questions to ask to get the response that he wants from you in order to make you feel like you've been heard. It's not been about being sleazy. It's about guiding the conversation. And so that's what we have to do, is guide the conversation with them. So the first thing I always ask them is, can you hear me? You know what I mean? I'm sitting here, I'm literally holding my pendulum and I'm like, all right, hey, can you hear me? And I'll get that yes. And I'll say, okay, hey, thank you for being here. My name is Nick, and I greet you in light and love of the Creator, and I'm here to help. And I let them know I've been sent here by the light, or I've been sent here by so-and-so family member to check on you and see if I can help you, and then I ask them, are you in pain or discomfort? And then they get a yes. And then I say, I can help you remove your pain. Would you like for me to assist you? Yes. I haven't asked them who they are, what they are, any of that stuff. Are you in pain? Yes. Would you like me to help you? Yes. Get to work. Then I start doing what I consider this technique that I've developed called the Ha breath. The way I do it is a little bit different. I have some videos on YouTube that go into detail about how this is done. So, and I could talk a little bit about it, but what I can really tell you is that when we do the Ha breath, you make that sound.
You just like, yeah.
And there's a reason why we do that, because if you do that, it engages the solar plexus. The solar plexus is the battery to your energy field. If you take the will of your heart, the will of your soul to want to heal, and you bring this energy field of force behind, because we have a physical body, and then you use your intention and direct it in a certain way, we can create miracles, and we can do a lot of really neat stuff with it. And the cool thing is working with this breath, it opens you. Some people do Reiki attunements. The breath will open you, and it'll open up all your clairvoyant abilities, and it'll increase them, because it's one of those things where we are working with the spirit. We are working with soul at the soul level at that point. I will tell you a little bit more about this though. And this is something that I don't really tell people, because I don't want them freaking out, and I don't want them thinking that this is what's going to happen to you. This is something that I have asked for. This is something that I've aligned my will for. And when I tell people that, when at home and I pray and I say, Lord, whatever the hell you have in store for me with anything I wanted to do is done. I'm not doing it no more. Anything you want me to do, I will see thy will be done through me. Be careful what you wish for, because they do listen and they do respond. So when I tell people that this is my intention, this is what I want to do. So now the way it works, this breath, it works like a magnet too. So like what I do now is I tattoo, right? I tattoo with people. And now one after another, these things keep coming to me. And so when I have someone that's with me and I already know something's going on in their house, and I say, how's everything going on at home? You know, you guys all sleeping good? And as soon as I can get them to think about their house, then I can start navigating through their house and finding, oh, I see you. Pull them. Oh, I see you. Pull them right to me. And I start yanking things out of their house. If people were in someone's haunted house when they were younger, I can see what they dealt with and pull them right to me. It's one of those things where you no longer have to look at photos. I have to be careful when I'm awake in the middle of the night and looking at some of these paranormal groups, because the thing is, when you set your intention and your will to connect on a soul level, this bypasses all your guides. This bypasses all of it. And it's totally allowed. But at the end of the day, when people are like, oh, how come it's coming? Those guides will protect me. If it's your purpose and you ask for it, believe me when I tell you, you can go past them. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they're there to assist us when needed. And by all means, they absolutely do. Mm-hmm. So doing this work is not for everybody, but for me, it's been everything, you know, and I can't find anybody else that's really into this stuff. Sometimes you hear about, you know, Hawaiian hunas, you know what I mean? They do this kind of stuff. And if you ask them, they'll tell you, oh, it's sacred knowledge. You don't know that, you're an outsider. Then I say, okay, and then we're going to go into the East and we're going to learn about pranic breathing. And they're like, oh yeah, it's all life force. You're good. You can learn it. Then we're going to go into ancient Egypt and we're going to learn about Ka. And we're going to learn about life force energy and give them the breath with the Ak that we see inside all these hieroglyphics. What I'm trying to tell you is this is soul information. This is not something that is restricted to one geographical location.
Right.
Yeah,
so
that's something that, I stay out of those arguments on who's allowed to use what and that and the third. I'm like, it is intention. And for your ego to say that somebody cannot do something, I was like, that's incredible to me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's your opinion and you have your right for that. But yeah,
I just dealt with that today. Someone told me that distance clearings were impossible and there's no way that I could do that. And I'm just like, don't be triggered right now, Nick. Don't be triggered.
Yeah, totally. I have people say that to me all the time because my business, I run everything remotely. I'm global. I get the same thing. Well, you're doing energy work. How am I supposed to feel it? I'm like, oh, wait for it. You'll smell my candles. Like, I got you. If I do it right, you will be able to feel it. And it's the thing of asking for permission, but it's also just that awareness and how we are with energy and how we can read it and we can put ourselves out there in those realms. It gives us that access. And when we don't have that judgment like others have, and that we feel like we're boxed in because we can only be this, we can only be that, people need to understand we can be whatever we're drawn to, but because we have ancestors from and last lives from all different directions, they could be pulling us back into another cycle that maybe we need to repeat. In a last life, I could have been Egyptian. I could have been a shaman. I had someone tell me because I'm white, I can't do shamanic work. I found a window through a healing and clearing of a house where I ended up learning shamanic work. And I remember thinking, wow, what if I had listened to that person and felt like I couldn't tap into shamanic healing? And then I went into this house and the Native American tribe, it's a long story, but they welcomed me in. It was a war area and, the land had been blessed and the house, of course, was very active because it was literally built on an Indian reservation. And it's that whole mindset of just being open and accepting what you're drawn to and leaving judgment and that 3D mindset. Because as soon as you start to think, oh, well, my grandpa's from Scotland and I have mostly Norwegian, so that's probably not of me to be, Aztec Indian. Well, maybe in another life, you know, and you have to tap in and go where you're drawn without judgment. And that just makes you even more elevated and connected spiritually, you know? So I love that you brought that up, Nick. That's totally true.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I try not to get triggered by that stuff. You know, I've been pretty good not triggered, but when someone tells me, but you're a white guy, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, dude, you are
Yep.
explaining the make and model of my car. I'm curious who's behind the wheel, but more importantly, what song are you listening to and where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
what I don't care about the color of your car. And if they only knew me, I'm brown on the inside anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. But what's so crazy is like it's funny because even in the spiritual world though too, like, you know, we can't sit here and pretend that we're all love and light and that we don't judge it, because, you know, I have a lot of resentments against religion because that's how I was raised, and that's why I don't talk about it, because until I can speak about it without my resentments, I won't. Throat chakra, right? We like to keep it open. So but it's funny that in the spiritual world too, there's also ego and dark and light, just like with everything else. And people forget to like, oh, that tarot card reader was evil. Okay, well, there's also priests that do pretty bad things. Okay, so let's not act like, you know, but at least we're honest about it. You know what I mean? Like there's light and dark everywhere. So, but anyway, what was I saying?
Well, I think that's human too, because people forget, yeah, we do what we do and we access realms and we work with archangels and guides and other people's higher selves, but that doesn't mean we're still human and we're not going to flip somebody off if they cut us off on a bad day, you know, or we're not going to have to cleanse. The difference, I feel like, is we can use our pendulums to reset and reconnect, because we have that ability to be aware of our energy and aware of our actions. So it doesn't mean we run around and go, oh, we're spiritual, nothing happens to us. It's like, no, we're spiritual because we know what happened to us. We're aware in our reaction. We're aware in how it impacted us. That's why we elevated and we work in spirit, because
and we accept responsibility for
and we healed, and now we teach other people how to do what we do, whether we're using pendulums or crystals. We go where we're drawn, and that's part of being spiritual and working in 5D, you know. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
yeah, so
oh, sorry, Nick. I had two more questions. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
One came up. I wasn't thinking of this, but when you talked about, when you asked, are they in pain? That's interesting because I've never asked that, or, you know what I mean? So what pain are they feeling? Like physical pain, if it's an earthbound entity and just a spirit, like what are they feeling? Is it like a physical pain that they're feeling or an emotional pain?
Both, usually both. Someone that, here we go. For instance, I had this gal that came in and I was tattooing her. I didn't know her. And so I just figured I'd take her down a trip down a weird road. And so we started talking and I'm like, I'm getting a lot of head pressure right here. And I said, there's a dude here. He looks like he could be like your grandpa's age, but this guy says he's not your grandpa, but he looks like he could be your grandpa's age. And I said, I don't know if he's an uncle or something. I said, but he's here. And I said, and I think he passed away from head trauma. And I said, and he keeps showing me this little silver coin. I was like, it's like a $50 or something like that. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. None of it's making sense. I'm like, well, in time we'll see. Right. And that's what, I don't know what I like more, instant gratification or the stuff that comes later. Oh, you know what? It's so crazy you said that, because here's what happened. You know, this gal went to her mom's house like 3 weeks later and was telling her the story about what I was saying, and her mom's jaw dropped. She went back to the bedroom and brought out this, it was like a $50, a silver $50, a 50-cent piece. And it said that her dad, which would have been this girl's grandpa, had carried it in his pocket ever since he was a kid, because his brother died in a motorcycle accident when he was 18, and that was in his pocket, and he carried it with him. And now the mom had it. And so really what it came down to was this dude had massive head pressure, right? And this gal that's here with me, she's on medication for what? Migraines.
Wow.
So what it comes down to is a lot of the stuff, I like to demystify some of the stuff. I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I feel like that. Let's look into the ethers, because that's where we're going to find a lot of answers. So when we have an earthbound entity that has some sort of a condition, we can feel it. Let's say someone that died quickly, someone that maybe died in a car accident, or maybe someone that overdosed and they didn't know that they died, or maybe they were afraid that they might have died and they weren't sure. They get around us and they make our heart race. They make it hard to breathe. They make every hair on the back of our neck stand up, and we're going, what the hell? I feel like I'm being watched. You feel terrified, right? Spin that around. Is that your fear Or is that the fear of what's around you that you are picking up on?
Mhm.
This is where everything changes, because we can really step into our power once we learn to let go and acknowledge what's around us. So are they in pain? You bet.
Mm.
Are they in discomfort? Yeah. And there's a lot we can do about that. In my healing protocols, I learned how to take away their pain. I keep it pretty simple. Take away their pain, take away their memories of pain, and nourish them. Nourish
Mhm.
them, and then help heal them. And then it gets them feeling a little bit better. And then from there, that's when we can start working with them. Sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated to that, where they themselves might have an entity attached to them. How many of you guys have ever heard of a Jinn before?
Mhm.
How about a red-eyed shadow person?
No.
I
I've
saw
heard
one.
Good for you, and the red-eyed shadow
Yeah.
person for you.
You saw a
Okay.
red-eyed shadow person?
I did when I was like, I must have been like 5 or 6 years old, and I still remember it. And I was sitting
Do you
on the
want me
couch.
to pull it forward now? Because this is how I do it.
What do you mean? Like just by me
I
talking about it?
just accessing your memory right now.
Really? So do you want me to talk about it?
You don't have to if you don't want to, because I already
No,
got
I
it.
do. I'm not like freaking out or anything. It's one of my core memories of the first encounter with an entity that really shook my core with my older
Same.
brother. So we were
Same.
sitting on the couch, and from the couch you could see the kitchen.
Something
And,
fall?
what's up?
I said, did something fall? Did you have stuff falling in that house?
I think so. I mean, it was very it was a very busy house as far as energy went, but I don't remember because I was so young. This is the only thing I do remember. My mom would have better recollection of that. But so you're looking in the kitchen, and in the kitchen you can see the door that leads out to the street. And the door had opened up a little bit by itself, and my brother and I are sitting on the couch like, what the hell is going on? It's nighttime. And I know this is probably hard to picture because nighttime, dark shadow, how can you tell the difference? But you
Like
can.
one's blacker than the other.
Yeah,
Right.
you can totally
So
see it.
we're looking into the crack because we're like, oh my God, we're watching our front door open on its own. And it's open probably about 12 inches. And then you see this head, this dark head peek in, and these red eyes.
Hell no.
And
Okay, the
me
peeking in, that's freaky.
and
This is
me
my favorite topic. Let's keep talking about this. This is my favorite.
So me and my brother, we stood up and we screamed and we ran upstairs, and there was a babysitter there at the time. My mom says that she practiced black magic, but we don't know. That's unconfirmed. That's what she's always said, though. The babysitter was bad or something. I don't know. So anyway, at that point, the babysitter came up, asked us what happened. We told her what happened, and that was that. But that was the first experience I remember very young, because it was like very scary.
That too was my first experience when I was young too. They were the very first things that I saw when I was little. So let's
Real?
talk about that a little bit. This is like probably my favorite subject, because it is the most least understood by the majority of people that I talk to.
Well,
And
And I have
believe
a question too when you're done.
okay, maybe we can just answer that question if you want. You can ask it.
No, because it's similar. It's a different type of entity. So go ahead with what you're doing, because I have a scary entity as well that as a kid scared me, but now it doesn't bother me. But I don't know what it is, and I know you'll know what it is.
Perfect.
So
Yeah, we'll totally get to that. So Jinn are a being, that they are a consciousness, that they are an energy, they are something that is absolutely real. And the way that they interact with us is on a mental plane. They're closer to electricity, but we have an astral body. They're a little bit different. And so they kind of rely on like the mental plane of stuff. But what us being creators, we have the ability to express emotion. And that emotion sends a lot of energy out from us, right? Which is good sustenance for them. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, if we think of a mosquito will find a host, it'll drink life force, it'll drink blood off of something, and then it'll fly away and find something else. That's how it knows how to survive. Now, is that an evil thing? Or is that just the way that it knows how to survive? These things, that's the way some of them know how to survive. And a lot of them get pulled here through different seances or witchcraft. And, you know, and they don't want to be here. They really don't want to be here.
maybe she did practice black magic then, right?
Or maybe you had a connection with one in a previous lifetime. Either way,
True that.
It was something that was apparent and it was there, and I was the only one experiencing it, and I didn't know what the hell it was, and it startled me, it froze me, and it kept an imprint in my mind and kept me searching for what the heck that was. And people were talking about ghosts. I'm like, that's cool. Well, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? That's what I want to know. What is this thing? So the Jinn, they are a being of energy, and they are very good at manipulating our electronics. They can set off our smoke alarms in the middle of the night. They can mess with the TVs, radios, even in our car and stuff. And one of the other things they've been known to do too is rip mirrors off walls. And so let's talk about why that happens. So Jinn, people, I believe at one point in time used to contact these things for information. They're extremely smart and spiritually way more advanced than us. And when we think of the population of Earth, we're outnumbered probably 10 to 1 from these things. They're everywhere. They are everywhere. So, and they're behind a lot of different,
from Game
so
of Thrones.
they're definitely behind a lot of addictions. They're behind a lot of suicides. And there's usually a lot of cancer that they're usually attached to one way or another, but usually addictions and suicides are like the two big main things. So these things, what they are polarity flippers. They will flip your polarity if they get essentially attached to your energy. These are the things that people hear talk to them in their heads when you deal with like schizophrenic people. But these will also be the things that will take a straight male who's 45, 50 years old, and now all of a sudden turn him into a chick named Susan. So they are polarity flippers. Now, I'm not going to get in a conversation about being born gay or any of that stuff, to each their own. I'm just telling you what I found through my personal experience. And Shanell, we have a few cases that we worked together. And when I looked at this, I remember you specifically said, this one's weird because you're looking at this person and it's like a reflection, and then the water ripples and it changes into somebody else. Do you remember that, Shanell?
I totally remember that. Yeah, and what I remember thinking, wasn't it a trailer park and it was the guy's garage with the bushes? Was that the house? Because we've done so many, but I'm pretty sure I remember that reading though to a T. That was amazing.
So now anytime I get the grasp of a face and I see a warm little wave in their face, instantly I know that there's some sort of a gender issue or an identity crisis or something that's going on with us right now. You know what I mean? And I want you to think of something real quick. We're so open to accepting these people walking different lives, where if they want to be the different gender, that's fine. But what is the number one cause of death in the transgender community?
Not being able to be themselves, right?
Suicide. Suicide.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is, even when you get the other parts and become the other stuff, this right here is not solid. This right here fuels all of it. You know what I mean? And that is exactly where they connect with us at. So knowing all of this going forward, there's something that we can do to help them and get them out of their state. So the same kind of hot breath technique I use, the only thing that's different about this is when I'm clearing a person, someone that is an earthbound human, I heal them, I do their stuff, and then I ask them to look down in the middle of their chest, kind of where we have our necklace and stuff, right in the middle of our chest, and I ask them, do you see a light there? And they look down and they see a light and they say yes. And I say, look into this light, gaze into this light, and take a deep breath in with me, and then I clear it on the spot. I developed this, or I came across this technique just before I released, like literally they were being printed just before I released my second book, and I almost didn't release my book because I'm going, what the heck? This method just blew all that other stuff out of the water, and I got pages of this stuff, you know what I mean? So information is information, and it's out there. When we do clearing on the Jinn, we can do the healing. They don't have a Christ spark. They don't have a soul. So I don't like nourish that. I don't send energy to that. But what I do is I just send source energy, unconditional love energy, fifth dimensional healing love energy, whatever you want to call it. I send it to them to nourish them, and it works just the same. The only difference is that they do not go to the light. They are not from the light. So we don't take them there. What we have to do is call upon the being of light. And even if you don't call upon one, if you ask them, can you look around the room once again, using your pendulum, hey, do you feel better? You get a yes. Then I say, okay, can you look around the room? Can you tell me, do you see a being of light here with you? And they'll say yes. Remember about directing the conversation? I ask, are they speaking to you? Yes. Are they asking you to go with them? Yes. Will you go with them? Yes. Not once did I ask the who are you, when are you, why, here and there. I didn't ask any of that stuff. It's not important. Do the work. So doing the work and getting them cleared, It's the best thing that we can do. And so we call upon a being of light, which for me, Archangel Ariel has been known many, many, many names around the world. I'll give you a few of them. If you go to Tibet, they're going to call her Tara. You go to China, they'll call her Kuan Yin. You talk about Catholicism, they'll call her Mary. You go to India, you'll hear her called Kali. You go to Hawaii, they call her Hui Hui. You go to ancient Egypt, they call her Sekhmet. And I know you guys have seen, I have a pendulum named Sekhmet. You go into another part of India, they also call her Shakti and Dura. So what it all is, you're trying to explain something that doesn't have one name. But what I can tell you, this divine feminine presence is extremely helpful and very, very powerful. And so the relationship that I've developed with her has been amazing. And so she's the one that I call upon to ask for assistance. And I'll say, hey, you know, do you look around the room? Do you see a being of light? I get a yes. I say, this is the Holy Mother. I say, you can trust her as you trusted me. She can guide you home. She can go there. So think of it like this. Holy Mother is divine feminine energy. Holy Mother does not have a physical body. I do. So what I'm doing is doing the things to assist her in the work so she can turn around and assist me with the work. But we bring something different to the table and the one thing that I hate most about when I see like scary movies with like, you know, The Conjuring and all this and that is they give so much power to this stuff when if you really wanted to, you can walk in, look at them and go, and you'd have them and they're yours.
Yeah.
And
Totally. Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's one of those things where
how come you're not scared anymore? I would not watch scary movies. They're like, how come you're not scared anymore? I was like, because now I know what it is. I didn't know what the energy was before, and I just was scared of it. But now I know that was all. It's not, Hollywood made it to be way more. You know what I mean? So then now that I know, it's like, no, there's nothing to be scared of.
And it's never like that in person. It's just Hollywood.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, and if we really knew like what we were capable of, I don't think people would be scared at all. You know, there was a quote that stuck with me really well, and I share it with people, and that is, I used to be afraid of the dark until I learned that I was light and that the dark is afraid of me.
Yeah.
Now, I want people to understand that when I do this work, yeah, I'm a guy. Yeah, I'm a football coach. Yeah, I'm a wrestling coach. Yeah, I can get pretty crazy. You know what I mean? And pretty intense. That does not work at all with what I'm doing.
Who
I
said
have to be
that? Where's
compassionate.
that quote from? That quote? Do you know?
I don't remember. It was probably just something I saw on Facebook.
I mean, like indirect quote from Nick Salzman, because I think I'm in my story.
So, you know, when
Jinn, how do you spell that? The Jinn.
Jinn.
Jinn. Okay, I wrote because I just want to. I've never heard that before, so that's why I was like, okay.
They have a lot of different names, and not only that, the jinns have classifications. There is a hierarchy to them too. And believe me when I tell you that they do not all get along with each other. They do not all like each other, and not all of them are bad. Pretty much. People say, are humans bad? I'm like, well, there's some really good people that give to people, and then there's other people that wear each other's skin. You know, like I don't know, like there's good and bad people. You know what I mean? Like, so it is what it is. So what we do is we just try and remember that love is what really does this. Love and compassion is what really is the fuel for this. And if you're doing it with anything else, you're not going to find it. Like there's some of these groups that I go into where they're like, you need to be firm and let them know that this is your house and da-da-da. And I'm like, all that is fear.
Stop.
It's all fear.
It is totally.
It's all fear, and it's not going to help. And it's the fear of you believing you're not going to have control over this. You know, how many times does the rock fight the river current only to eventually be subdued by it and be smoothened by it and changed by that consistent soft pressure? So the love that I express for these, it's going to sound kind of crazy, but when they come in my space, like right now, right here, the one we just talked about, Kim, that was from your house, is right here in this room with me. It's making all sorts of noise, and the only thing that it needs to know is that I'm its brother and that I can help it. From this side of the veil, it is an honor and a privilege to help them. And so when you can learn to acknowledge them, and now people say, hey, you know, doesn't this stuff get you tired? You got to have working hours, right? You got to have opening and closing hours. Sometimes I'll be aware of it and I can say it in my head, or I can say it out loud, and I can say, hey, I know you're there and I know you need some help, but right now I'm very tired. Let me rest, leave my family alone, deal with me specifically, and I promise I will help you. Look into my soul, look into my history, see who I am, what I'm about, and tell me if I'm telling you the truth. And you know what that does? Calms them down immensely, because they now know that they've been heard. I mean, you know, I'll share with you a little a personal experience. You know, I don't know what people's beliefs are on hell or whatever, but I think I've been there a few different times, and I can tell you there's no flames. There's no pitchfork devils running around doing anything like that. Imagine being in a place that's dark, you get thrown into a pool, you're soaking wet, and you have to walk 5 miles home and it's really windy. That's hell. That's what it feels like. And the emotion that's there, a lot of these people get so upset. That's the only thing they can see. And they go, what do you mean? Like, how come you can say that? I said, let me ask you this. When you're in a dream, how many times do you remember, oh, I'm Shanell, I live at this address, I'm sleeping in my bedroom right now, which has this color sheets, and I have these dogs in my house? We don't remember that stuff while we're dreaming. All we are is just consumed with what we're seeing and taking in. It's exactly the same for them. They're just too busy taking in everything. And sometimes we're like, hey, over here, come here, I got you, come over here, man. So now what I get to do with people is I get to have a lot of fun. And I will, when we work on clearing entities, you don't have to do it one at a time. Humans and non-human entities, I have to do separate. But if I have a group, like say I'm in a hospital full of a bunch of people that pass from cancer, I can round up the whole hospital and work on them. We can do that. So sometimes I'll go to these sporting events. I'll go to a big wrestling tournament. For instance, I had this girl, she was a little teenager. She's probably like 13 or 14 years old, little wrestler. She had like green hair and stuff. And I remember I was walking by, I never met this girl before. And she was just staring straight at me. And I walk by, I look at her, and she puts her hand out to shake my hand. And instantly I picked up on the abusive person behind her, and I touched her, and I pulled that thing to me, and I'd say, come with me, I'm going to help you out. That's what I do now, is I pull stuff and I get them to come with me and stay with me, so that way I can take care of it and then they don't bother the people no more, if that makes sense. So I tell you this because this isn't everybody's experience, but this is daily life for me. And it's something that I'm really, really happy to do. And I'm really grateful to be able to do it. And it's not scary at all. And it's something that is actually quite fulfilling. And it really has propelled me along. But once again, I don't know too many people into this stuff. And so it's kind of hard to share information. So what do? Make some videos and try and do the best I can to describe my point of view and hopefully help somebody, you know? So
well,
whether it's
we're into this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I'm so happy to be here. We get to talk about this stuff, man. We get 1 hour. I could talk much more than that.
Hell yeah. That's why I was like, we definitely got to bring you back, because before we log off, right? I mean, gosh, Nick, thank you, because so much great stuff. You know, I love hearing the stories, like the personal experiences. That's the stuff that like really like, oh my God, that's so cool. But for the people watching the videos, and you can see, I'm going to attach his website, but Nick also makes amazing pendulums. And the last one that I got from him, I'm showing in the video. So if you want to see it, just have to watch the YouTube. But I use this specifically for the Akashic records when I do my readings to figure out how many past lifetimes somebody's had, their attachments and all that. So because of all his experience, he uses that and his intuition to make these amazing tools for the rest of us to use, you know, for divination and doing what we do. So thank you, Nick, also for your creations. So I'm going to include all of those links, guys. You've heard some of the amazing things that he has done, that he can do, all of his information. We're definitely having you back on. That's like for sure.
How do we talk an hour already?
Yeah, can you believe it?
I know, I'm bummed. I had more to say and questions. I'll just mess.
Oh my gosh. Well, no, what was your question, Shanell? Because we don't have to cut off.
Yes, Shanell, let's hear your question.
Yeah, because
the one thing I wanted to ask you is that we had talked about earlier. When I was little, I used to see a ball of spiders, and it would crawl, and like it was about the size of like a little smaller than a basketball, but a little bit bigger than a baseball. And it would like, I would have to, if I stared at it, it wouldn't. So here's how it would go. And this is when I knew I had some sort of skill set, because I saw this thing all the time. And it started when I was like, I remember as far back as like 4, because it was at a house we lived in, that was haunted, and they would real fast crawl around each other in a little ball. And as long as I stared at it, it would stay away. But if I closed my eyes, when I opened, they would like burst, like come at my face and then go away. So it never actually touched me, but they would all come at me. And so the way for the first couple of years of me dealing with this, I would stare at it till I fell asleep. Then I got to where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to watch them and I'm going to guide them out of my bedroom door. And I'll just look into the hallway and I'll eventually get them to stay into the hallway. Because my thought was, my mom always kept the hall light on. And I, when you're a kid, if you have the light on, nothing scary can come to you, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was my thought as a kid. As long as the light's on, I'm good. So I'd be like, I'm going to push it into the hall light because it'll go away. Well, it wouldn't, but then if I blinked and opened my eyes, it wouldn't come at me. So I could like know that I could close my eyes and I wasn't afraid to open them, because there was a time where, and I'm not kidding you, if I closed my eyes by accident, I would freak out and be like, oh my God, I can't open my eyes, because if I open my eyes, it's going to come at me. So I would keep my eyes closed and go into the hallway and turn the light on and then open my eyes with my back turned. So I would like found all these different techniques as a kid to like get around it. When I started, so it'd be like I was like 8 or 9 by now, and I could, by watching it, I could move it into the hallway and then keep it, like contain it. So as long as I could move it into a different room, I was able to contain it. To this day, I've never been able to find anything on that, read it. And I had those experiences with that thing until I was a teenager. And one day and this is where my Reiki healing comes in, because I one day was like, I'm just going to send it love. If I just tell it I love it, maybe it'll go away. And so I started going, I love you. I love that you're here. And I won't lie, I was kind of being a smart ass, because I was like, well, shit, it's been 10 years now. I love you. And I want to stay here. I think you're great. Because I'm like playing mind games. Well, I really did start to send it love and was like, maybe I'll name it. And then it went away. So I've always wondered what that was. I bet it's probably something you would be able to identify.
So we didn't talk about this yet, but I got to say a little blurb about a poltergeist. Poltergeist being a projection of energy of stuff in our subconscious, usually our fears and things we don't like. So we can project energy. What you're dealing with is what's called a tulpa. A tulpa is something that usually it's more like an etheric residue that it comes from like ceremonial witchcraft. Usually people that are into Wicca, people that are into working with nature spirits or any of that kind of stuff are prone to this stuff. Can I ask you, did you ever see it take shape with something that had white or silver eyes?
No, it never had eyes.
So these things can evolve over time. They can evolve over time, and they usually turn into things that are kind of like our fears, right? And I have a couple of videos on this. So think of it like this. If we have someone that's scared of snakes and there's a tulpa or a poltergeist in their house, it might once in a while take on the form of the serpent, or maybe something that's in the dream. Now, let's say a person moves out of that house, poltergeist energy stays there. Now we get a young girl that moves into the house, and let's say she was abused by a male. And so she's always afraid of seeing a male standing in her doorway coming into her room at night. And then it's not going to be very long till guess what that turns into? The shape of a person standing in the doorway. So what happens is our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions, it's like clay, and we give it structure. Have you ever heard people talk about different paranormal things where they're like, oh, I heard my husband whistling, but he wasn't home, or, oh, I heard someone but they really weren't here? This is a very, very advanced form of a poltergeist. They have the ability to take a little bit from each person that they interact with. And then over time, if we don't clear them, they almost seem like they have a personality on their own. Now, someone that says, I clearly saw my husband walk through and he wasn't here, that is not a poltergeist at all. That is a type of Jinn. Jinn are also very good at doing that. They are very much shapeshifters. Like, I feel like I would love to have 3 hours to talk about this stuff, because it's really something that I've gone into detail and in depths and really try and figure out the differences and how they're all created. So to answer your question, that's a tulpa. And if you were seeing it at a young age, I wonder, and you could probably check this with your own pendulum, your own intuition, how many would say that that was a connection from another lifetime?
I would agree for sure, because I've always had it. And when it went away, when I sent it to the light, and at that time, I remember just being like, it's gone. But I look back now and I'm like, I wondered if I healed it. Maybe it was an attachment or something that followed me into this life, because I started seeing it so young. It could have very well followed me into this life. And maybe in the last life, it was something else, but it never was mean. It never had any type of like scary energy. It was more or less just because it was spiders, and I didn't like spiders when I was a kid. So you know, like you said, it took on a form of something I was afraid of. So, but I always wondered what that was, because I've never been able to find anything on it. I even like Googled spiritual spider clusters, and I was like Greek and, you
Yeah,
know,
advanced forms of these things is like when you're going to hear people talk about seeing like shadowy creatures that have like big snarly teeth and stuff. These are like advanced forms of this stuff. So that's pretty normal.
yeah. Well, and you're the one that helped me. When I had my incubus, you're the one that helped me between the incubus and succubus with the demonic experience too. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of people don't even think those things are a real thing. You know, and I could tell you, Jinn can attach to them. And then next thing you know, you're getting dreams about having like intercourse with something that is very off-putting. This is not like a match made in heaven that you experience. This is something that, for the most part, you probably are pretty uncomfortable about it. Very, very, very common, but the tulpa, super easy to clear. Poltergeist, super easy to clear. The best method that I've found is after I do the, healing that's on it, take away the memories of pain, because that's also when you say like, take away your memories of pain, that's like everyone's like thoughts of fear that like go into them as well. And so we work on neutralizing that. And then I don't really nourish them. They don't really need nourishment, but where I send them is back to what I call the universal mind. That's where all of our thoughts and ideas come from, and they come to us from our mind or from the universal mind. So that field is where I found that they best go. Sometimes you can, take care of them in another way, but I found that's probably been the most consistent one, is being able to send them off to the universal mind. And that would be something I would call upon the being of light, or for me, it's the Holy Mother. Someone that can assist you. All of you guys already have someone that's assigned to you, but I have a feeling that if you called on the Holy Mother, she would be there.
It's funny that you say that, because I'm literally listening to a book right now, and it's the Book of Goddesses. And, they literally went through Kali, Kuan Yin, Lilith, Mary, Mother Mary. So it was interesting that it's like all those names, Shakti. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's the same entity. And she was explaining it as like, the goddesses. So that's pretty cool, because I literally,
she doesn't like praise. She doesn't want you to have a big, like, of course I have things in here that I, show our connection and my appreciation for her. I've named 2 pendulums after her. So there is ways that I show appreciation, but that's not what she wants. That's not what she's looking for. She likes to assist and likes to help. And this is something that has never been human. This is something that it is a creative energy. If you were to look up angels, it was what you would consider a seraphim angel. Seraphim angel being probably the closest to the right hand of God. She is also known as the lioness of God. So it's someone that is very much the Egyptians would pray to her before going into battle, and she was quite fierce. She's a lion-headed goddess of ancient Egypt, and also the patron saint and healer of ancient Egypt.
sweet. I was gonna say, I clearly need to start working with her. And then as a healer, you just said the patron saint of healer. I was like, well, there you go. You know what I mean?
I think you already are, to be honest. And I think you take that pendulum for a spin and just ask His Holy Mother here with me. And I think that's all you need to know, and enjoy the relationship, because she's wonderful and she can be in many places at once. And most of the time, people that come into my tattoo shop, a lot of them she is working through. People that she has a tendency of work through are ones that are also really good with animals. People that, dogs and cats are drawn to them. People that really enjoy being outside and stuff. She's also the ruler of the animal kingdom. So, you got one of those people like me, for instance. I will go over to people's houses and there's that dog that don't like nobody, or that cat that doesn't come out of the room. I was in my meditation class with about 6 other people at this house, and they had a cat in the back that would never come out because it was always people at the house. They hated people. It was very skittish. And I'm sitting here meditating, and I feel something touch my leg, and I look down, and this cat curls up on my lap and starts laying there. And so I'm just sitting here meditating, and I'm just giggling. And then when everybody opened their eyes and saw this cat laying on my lap, they were like, what the heck? So it sounds funny. It's for a reason. And there's definitely potential when you start noticing that kind of stuff. So working with the Holy Mother has been nothing but amazing. She's not the only one I work with, but she's definitely a main one for me right now.
Your books too, because I did forget to mention that you've written 2 books, and you mentioned it quickly, and I do have one of them. So guys, I'm going to put the links for his books as well. There's tons of charts that he uses, lots of information on how to clear entities, and just so much more. Cause like he said, he could be on here for 3 hours. So we're just gonna have to bring him back. We could do a whole episode on the Jinn. You know what I mean? And because
I like that.
yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Like, thank you.
No doubt. And if you guys want to see any of my pendulums, Pendulum Apometrics is the name of my website, pendulumapometrics.com. Kim will leave a link for you.
Yep.
One of the newest things that I came out with, I want to show you real quick, is working with the Jinn so much, I've developed a pendulum that's really, really effective at working with them. And so this is what I call the Anubis. Anubis being the saint of the underworld and the carrier of the dead, judging the souls of the dead or whatever. So very, very fitting that Anubis was going to be the one named after this pendulum. So the cool thing about this pendulum that sets it apart from the other ones that I have is that when we work with this one, it also harmonizes us. And when I work with Jinn, I can work with more than one at a time when I'm working with this pendulum. And so when you learn of the hierarchy that's there, when you have some of your, kind of lower level jinns that are there, then you have the Ifrit, which is you're going to have more of the red-eyed ones of the Ifrits. They're the ones that are powerful and are usually not in a very good mood. Then it gets a little bit more than that. Then you get to be told about the Shaitan. The Shaitan are the ones that are usually associated with black magic and witchcraft. And those are usually the ones that can actually make Ifrits do their bidding. Let me tell you who they answer to. Something else that's called a Rakasha, something that would be what you would almost consider a royalty. And so believe me when I tell you, they are not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
You are not to fear them either.
I was like, when you said that's your calling, I was like, I think my calling is just Reiki and tarot. I'm going to stay in my lane right now. I don't think I'm ready to deal with the Jinn. You know what I mean? But it is interesting.
Either way, your clients will probably already be interacting with them and they're going to be bringing them into your space.
That's
and
true.
So I tell people, if you're going to work with the light, what makes stars shine bright at night? It ain't the sun. It's the darkness around them. So if you're going to work in the light, you're going to work in the dark. And if you don't work in the dark, you're not really working in the light.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to bring darkness to light. And that's how we have really good healing sessions with people, is when we bring that darkness to light.
Mm-hmm.
True.
That's a lot of what I do with medical medium, because people don't realize a lot of their illnesses and their diseases are actually dark energies attached to them. And a lot of their trauma is there. So I have to bring that darkness through and give it light. And I tell my clients, like, talk to yourself, talk to your trauma, talk to your pain. There is an energy there that is trying to communicate with you. And it's so similar to what you're doing, in that it could be a Jinn, it could be something else from last life, and we bring that forward, and it identifies their physical illness almost every time. So I love how you worded that. I'm like, oh my God, I need to use that with my clients, like bring that dark energy forward, because that dark energy is usually an illness or a block on their energy that's going to manifest into illness. I love that analogy.
One thing I have to say, I know you all want to wrap this up. One thing I have to say right now, though, is working with all these different entities and doing hundreds, if not thousands of clearings, you know what I mean? One of the things that I've found is there's always something in similarity between you and it, whether it's me looking in somebody else's house or me looking in even my own house. There is always going to be a connection between us and them. Usually it's an emotion. Usually it's a trauma. Usually it's a belief. And so for me, like, say I was someone that, like, over time I did, like, when I was younger, did like a lot of drugs, and I drank a lot of alcohol when I was younger and stuff, just kind of went through that. So it was very, very common for me to have things that came to me that also had drug addictions when they were alive, that also had anger issues when they were alive, that had alcohol issues when they were alive. And all that really does is point to what's inside of us. And if I could leave one thing with you guys for this show, not only what we seek is seeking us, but instead of saying, what's wrong with this person? What's wrong with this entity? What did they die from? I say one thing, and that is, what do we have in common? And then I go, oh, this person's overworked. Oh, this person didn't get a chance to live the life that they wanted to. Oh, this person doesn't feel appreciated. Oh, this person really feels alone. At that point, I know them. I know them very well, because I know me, and I can't know them without knowing me, if that makes sense. So dealing with the dark brings our own darkness to light. And when that light comes in and it fills, something else better takes place. But we got to go through it to grow through it.
Yes, amen. I'll say an amen to that. That's a great way to end it. That's awesome. Well, Nick, again, thank you a gazillion times. And we're definitely having you back on, because this seriously could have gone on like forever.
Oh, for real.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we're just getting warmed up, to be honest. Like we're we're scratching the surface of what Nick's knowledge is, because I've been working with Nick for years. I mean, Nick, I can't even believe how much time has passed. I've been working with you for years, and we literally are just scratching the surface of the amount of knowledge he has. So, because I tap into him all the time, like, Nick, what is this? And he'll be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And he goes back into like, Egypt and whatever was going on back there. And I'm over here like, oh, okay. I just saw cancer, but okay.
Yeah.
So
And it's only our
awesome.
6th episode. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, we got plenty more to bring you on. So
No
yeah,
doubt.
that's
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with y'all and share space with you. And, any of the audience, comes across this video 6 months later, 6 years from now, and they got a question about it, drop a question. I'll probably be around to answer it one way or
Yeah.
another. So,
yeah.
even if people miss the opportunity to speak on this, it's cool. I would love to hear everyone's feedback on this and answer
Yeah.
any questions. That's just
Yeah.
probably my biggest goal in life right now, is just demystifying the unknown and helping people really step into their true power. Really step into their true power.
Yeah, you know what what I failed to do on the other podcast is our email address. So I'm also going to include that, guys. So if you have questions for Nick, and then also his information, so you can email him directly also.
You can email me or find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram. I'm super responsive with the direct messaging. So feel free to shoot me a message, even if we're not linked up as friends. Shoot me a message, I'll respond.
Hey, thank you, Nick, for being so
Thank you,
open.
Nick.
Yes, that was awesome. All right, guys, until next week,
Thank
keep it love and keep it light.